Hi guys. So I don't know what happened because my recording only had the transcript. It doesn't make sense. I did just get off with Spectrum. Hopefully it'll be taken care of for the class at 1:30, but my 10:30 class didn't go that great either. So I'm going to record this for those of you who are remote learning, doing the recorded sessions, just so you have it. It's obviously not exactly the same, but if I forget to do something, I'm going to be extra flexible. Unfortunately, I have some symptoms again, which may be something new or just on who knows, who cares. I don't want to go into it. So, really, on Tuesday, what we focused on was Louise Dermott Sparks. I'm doing a terrible job of writing her name, but that's okay. So she is the author or one of the authors of our anti-bias education book. She is really a seminal person, and that textbook is seminal in the field for early childhood anti-bias. So we just started like an introduction to get you guys going into your content map for the work of the week, which is going to be Louise. We are getting very close to the end. And one thing I remember I was trying to get across to people was that we were going to do one more theorist after this. It's not in our book, kind of like Montessori wasn't in our book. Her name is Vivian Bailey. And if you've taken other courses with me, you've probably heard of her. For some reason, she really wasn't in 125 that much, but it's really important that we start, at least in an introductory way, examining her, because I think she's a really important figure in early childhood, especially literacy, and literacy we know goes across all the content areas. So, Louise Dermott Sparks, though, we really were kind of going from our already prior knowledge based on our work in our textbook, our anti-bias textbook. We didn't even start reading the readings that are assigned from our Theories Made Visible book. So this was just kind of a quick kind of like, what do we already know that we know has to be on a content map with Louise Dermott Sparks and anti-bias education? And one of those things I know we talked about was that the 4 goals of anti-bias education should be on there. And now, do kids need to know the 4 goals? No, we don't make kids memorize the 4 goals of anti-bias education, but teachers need to be connecting content area, need to connect everything that they're teaching to our 4 goals, I think. We have to get to the point where anti-bias shouldn't be an added on thing. It shouldn't be like 1 month a year. It shouldn't be, this month is for Black history. This month is for Asian culture. We need to really be doing this all the time. And then we can still do those special times and honor that. But we need to be embedding all of this. So it's something teachers need to know. And so we had the 4 goals of anti-bias education. We talked about identity, diversity, justice, and activism. So a lot of the times when I try to share books with classes, or if we're talking about something specific, I'll say, well, how does this connect to like the 4 goals? Because really everything can. This is not brand new. You know what's brand new? So if we look at Dewey, when we looked at Dewey, we know Dewey believed that culture and family should be involved. It's just that the bunch of men were in charge, and the idea of what was considered a family and culture was very much not what it is today. So we need to broaden the understanding of what those things mean. And I think that then it was very much what is the norm, and then it wasn't like we wanted everybody to have the same idea of what everything was. And I don't think that's where we are now, because what we find in education is that when we make entire peoples feel invisible, that they don't learn so well. And that kind of brings me to Maslow, who's like, your basic needs have got to be met. So we have that 4 goals under teacher roles, but this identity piece and diversity, well, we need to have that brought in. So celebrating each individual. There is a very social component to anti-bias education because it's really about building the way we view community and the people that are in it. So celebrating each individual and understanding diversity in the class, in the school, in the world, right? It goes kind of in stages. This is also like families welcomed in as part of. Now, learning is very social, right? So it's one thing to celebrate each individual, but unless we are all like all the children are seeing that and embracing it, then we're not doing it. I think learning for Louise Dermott Sparks is a social activity. We're talking about teachers guiding the way we talk, guiding, if they're having a difficult conversation, teachers are there to support and help children learn the words around the different ideas of diversity and identity, but also just simply around like justice, right? So if we see somebody be treated unfairly, and this isn't always, when we're giving children the words for that, it may not always be around an identity piece, right? It might be, oh, that doesn't seem fair, he hasn't had a turn. Everybody else has had a turn. Maybe a student is like, he didn't get a turn, we accidentally skipped him. So learning is social. It's also student directed, right? A lot of the times, if you're looking at the where lessons go, or when they talk about anti-bias work, they're talking about something initiated by a comment by a child. It's organic. It tends to be organic. Like, you don't want to have like a whole curriculum. You can have a curriculum. That's all great, right? And yeah, we want to touch base, but the most powerful teachable moments are when we can sit there and we heard an interaction, then we can take that as a seed of where we need to go, and we can go forward. Now, the other thing we talked about a lot with Louise Dermott Sparks is the environment. An anti-bias education environment, a best practice one, has a lot of physical components. So it has a variety of children's literature. Everyone in the classroom is represented in the books. But also, what if we have a very homogeneous class? We need to make sure that it's representative of the world. So, representative of class and beyond. Okay. But beyond that, the physical components also need to be posters, toys, supplies. We saw Louise definitely art supplies, right? Crayons, paint, so that we don't just have the colors for one color of one type of people. We want children to be able to explore through a variety of art supplies and paper supplies. So crayons, paint, paper, etc. Like, we don't want them to feel like everybody, well, obviously, if you have a black crayon and a white crayon, you're still not getting to what the actual color of the children in our room. So we've looked at videos that kind of explore how we can best like expose children to that. So we talked about that. I'm trying to think, definitely maybe environmental sometimes. There's a lot of classes. I think NACCE wants you to at least have Spanish, I believe. But if I have a child in my class who's teaching another language, I want to include that on the maybe in the labels that I'm putting around the room. It's a respectful thing for parents. It's a respectful thing for the children, so they can kind of start to associating. That's the French word. That's the English word. That's a picture of the word, because we may have children that can't read yet. So we're giving that symbolic representation and we're putting it in multiple modes around visually of the classroom. So there's multiple opportunities to learn it. I think like in terms of the emotional stuff, I feel like in this one it's that idea that if you take care of all their basic needs around identity and diversity, justice and activism, these are more complex, but and we're working on them, but definitely really early on, identity and diversity, we're hoping that that's going to lead to the greater self-esteem and sense of self, and that later on that transfers through as they get older. So greater self-esteem and sense of self, because unless you have a good sense of self and self-esteem, you aren't going to be really on board with activism or maybe even seeking justice. If you feel bad about yourself, you might not speak up and say, hey, I don't think that's right, could you help me? So we have work to do based on the number of mental health issues that we have in this country. There is a need to see that public schools starting early doesn't mean that everybody has to be the same or fit in the same box, right? We need to help children develop a sense of self and good positive feelings about who they are as young from the get-go. We need to also, like, I think we're learning that we need to learn the words. So when we're doing when we're building their vocabulary, we need to include those words around self-esteem or different words to describe ourselves physically or emotionally, so that they are better able to express how they're feeling. That I don't know that we've totally read that in the Antibias book. We'll have to check in on that, but it'll also be curious to see if that is something reflected in the theories made visible. So that's really like the bulk of what we discussed on Tuesday, with some probably asides. And but we kind of just got going on Louise Derman Sparks. And then what I talked about, we're going to do Vivian Paley next week, who also I think is talking a lot about how self-esteem really impacts later on, and how why she chooses makes some of the choices she makes around how she runs her classroom, which we're going to watch the video. Some of you may have already seen it, the rejection video, which Vivian Paley is in and is talking about starting as young as pre-K, probably earlier, and like whether children should be able to tell people they don't want to play with them, like choose their own play group in school, like. And she makes some pretty compelling arguments. She does tie it very drastically to like active shooters in schools and things, which is an extreme take on it, right? But we also just have a lot of people that drop out. We have a lot of people that commit suicide. And so I think we need to be honest and be deliberate in looking at what different people are really saying we need to focus on in the early years. A lot of time I think we say we gotta talk a lot more, but maybe we need to talk a lot more about social emotional stuff. Just as much as like they always want us talking more about math and talking more about everything, right? So I think what Louise Derman Sparks ends up saying is that, and we'll see how it translates to the actual theories made visible, but the cognitive stuff, like when students are interacting socially around learning, those are your prime opportunities to really see what children are thinking or hearing, maybe at home or in school, and then help them think through like choosing to express those things differently in a way that makes everybody feel a part of the classroom community. So that's kind of, then we do Vivian Paley. Then after that, there will be a theorist exam. And the theorist exam is a little different in that it's not like, so far you get, it's Erikson week. So you get Erikson scenarios and they're Erikson scenarios. Because I told you, you just got to find Erikson in them. What's different this time is you get like 12, 13 scenarios. I have to change it a little because we're doing Vivian Paley and I don't think Vivian Paley was on there. And you have to figure out which scenario you think matches with which theorist. So it's a little bit more application based. But what I also told people, there are some limits in the directions. Like you have to use each one once. If you can support that you see the theorist in there in a thorough way, then I'm not going to mark you wrong, because we can often see multiple theorists at work, right? There's overlap. So you get scenarios and then you have to figure out which theorist you want to apply to it and back it up. That's your exam. So it's a little different. That's why the content maps are really great if you keep them, because then on this exam, you can just keep referring to them. And then we also talked about the fact that in a full in-person class, what I usually do is have people meet in groups and discuss the scenarios each week, and then go home and write up the quiz. And that, in my opinion, it hasn't been working in this modality of HyFlex, because the 5 people that are in person don't take advantage. They're very quiet or whatever, and they just don't seem to take advantage of that opportunity for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just like, if everyone's there, usually have a mix of people of different, like really outgoing or not, different people are different in different groups. So it doesn't work. I don't want to have a HyFlex class and then have everybody watch everybody for an hour and 15, not talk to each other. So I don't plan on doing it that way. The exam, I also usually have people be able to discuss it, but I don't see the point of doing that if no one is going to take advantage of it, because we have a lot of people that are taking this either live online or watching it later. And if we're not going to have anything to watch, that doesn't seem fair. We've missed a lot of classes. So that's where we are. That's what's coming up. We'll see how my internet goes this afternoon. It did not work well in my morning, but I have spoken to Spectrum to try to fix it. Thank you for your patience. I apologize.